Erev Tov, Chavrim. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and I know many of you guys that are just now seeing us going live here. It's a bit before the time that we're supposed to go live, so I'll real quick, while we give a chance for people to join in with this, just had some breaking news we wanted to share with you and get your attention on this. But real quick, just let me let you know about one thing that's happening as well. Or two things, actually. We have our conference there that's coming up in Kansas City. If you just type in conference.israelinewslive.org, you'll go straight to the page there. We got the venue and the hotels now up on our website, thanks to our web guy that we have there. We really appreciate his extra work to do that. So you can click on it there. You can see where the venue actually is located at in Kansas. It's actually Shawnee, Kansas, at the place called a Pavilion. And so that's where we'll be holding this event at. We hope you're able to make it there. We do have plenty of space for you to come, and we also have several hotels listed for you. So you can choose, actually two hotels, two hotels that are listed here. You have the prices there on some of them. Actually, both of them show the prices of the hotels and the type of hotels that they are. So if you're looking for accommodations, it looks like we are going to do a 2-day event. So not just only December the 2nd, but December the 1st on Shabbat, on that Saturday. But the Shabbat part of the message would actually begin after lunchtime. We'll do an afternoon event there, and this is early preliminaries on this. I still have to get confirmation with the event coordinator there on that to be sure that we can actually pull this off. So if you're planning to come, it's a tremendous amount of information we're going to be sharing. And also, let me just let you know too, we did a broadcast earlier today, a live broadcast with Christopher Bolin. Christopher Bolin is an incredible journalist, investigative journalist that unraveled the 9/11 conspiracy, really showing who was involved in the planning of the attack, how long this has been going on. He really did, just like I said, a marvelous job on that. But we also went deeper into these things, showing the conspiracies and the cover-ups, not only in 9/11, but the whole terrorist network that's happening throughout the Middle East, that's happening even today. How that 9/11 was just the catapult that launched the United States in this war in the Middle East there, in a war that's just really a terrible war. So you definitely go and watch the video. They are suppressing the views on this video. This video would have already easily been 15, 20,000 views. And it's just like a snail moving along. And I know that's just not true. Too many people are interested in this subject and knowing what the truth is. The comments are really amazing, the way the people are talking about this. A lot of people that just did not know are speaking about how this is really opening their eyes to what really is going on in the world. And I know from my own background just how sinister governments can actually work and what they are willing to do. So I can't encourage you enough to watch this broadcast. My wife was with me on it as well. She's an amazing speaker herself. And, she just knows how to ask the right questions, not to mention the knowledge that she has on the subject, which she will be speaking in Kansas as well. So really a lot of information you want to check out. Now, let's get right into the news, though. We've got some very serious things, and our good friend Lorenzo had already happened, has really been sharing some things with me here lately. This here, and let me just pull this up on the screen for you. This is, Israel is moving a lot of tanks into position, armored vehicles as well. Now, by the way, when you look at the screenshot here, you got 4 tanks right there. Armored vehicles are over on this side here. Then you got another row of tanks, 2, 4, 6, 7, looks like another 8th one there. You got more in the back and behind those 4 there. So more than a dozen tanks here are lined up and ready. So it seems to be very obvious that Israel is getting ready to go into Gaza. And we know rockets have continued to come in. The people in the Gazan Strip there, they're really under a tremendous pressure by the different sanctions and things that are happening against them. I know you have a tit for tat, but it's a very very disturbing situation that's happening there. And unfortunately, you know, we have been far too long have been lied to, friends. I just have to tell you like it is. We have been far too long lied to. And, you know, as I have stated many times in the past, I support Israel's right to defend itself. But what has been going on is a tragedy. I really wish Barry Chamish was here right now. He could really help weigh in on this issue. He would show you some of the balances of what is happening in Gaza, because he knew both sides of the story. You know, Barry was as an Israeli investigative journalist. He was there for the sake of the Israeli people, but he also knew how that the Zionist government, who I say the Zionist government, when I say that, you have to understand, there are good people in the Israeli government, but there are Zionists that are controlling this government. Just like the Likud party is very much a part of the faction of the Erdogan group, Menachem Begin, who started this party here. And there has been some very, very sinister things that have happened in the Israeli government over the years, just like it was in the very founding of the nation of Israel. And so a lot of issues are there, and there are crimes perpetrated against the Israeli people, just like at the beginning of the creation of the state of Israel, to make it look like that the problem is worse than what it may be. Now, I'm not saying that the people in Gaza don't launch rockets into Israel. Sure they do. Absolutely. This needs to be stopped. And unfortunately, a ground war is probably the only way you can stop it properly, because dropping in huge JDAM bombs on Gaza is just really insanity when you're dealing with so many children that live in this area here, children that have nothing to do with what's going on inside of Israel to begin with. But the situation gets escalated from things that we just totally ignore. We just totally ignore them. Ever since the Intifada first began under Yasser Arafat, these things have really spiraled out of control, friends. They've just, you know, I need to take the time to really go into this in a different video on this, to talk about this more, what's going on, because you need to understand what's happened from early on, why we have gotten to the place we are today. Hamas, definitely a terrorist organization. I agree with that, no doubt about it. But there's just a lot that we are not told, and that's what you need to know about as well. Also, another thing that's going on too, this Trident drill 2018 that is being carried out. These are military equipments that are headed there in Norway on the train track cars there. And not only that one there, but there's another rail that was going there at night. By the way, that's U.S. Marines landing in Norway at the MV-22 Ospreys that were dropping the Marines off there. And then you have this train rail car here, just tremendous amount of military equipment headed up to Norway there. And, you know, at one point you look at this and you say, okay, a military drill, but another side of it, you can't help but wonder, is it really just a drill, or could this end up being worse? You know, Russia did the same thing. Russia had their massive drill that they had. And so at this point right now, I think that the NATO is trying to show Russia that they also have the ability to have a massive amount of troops up on the border. And so big issues there. Looking over here at the Times of Israel, UN Peace Envoy warns Gaza is imploding amid dismissal of economic and humanitarian conditions in the Strip. Maladanov says Israel and Hamas nearing another potentially devastating conflict. With its economy in a free fall and tensions rising with Israel, the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip is imploding. The UN envoy to region warned on Thursday. Nikolai Mladenov delivered the warning of the Security Council a day after the Palestinian rocket slammed into a home in the city of Beersheba. The Israeli planes pounded the Gaza Strip in retaliation. Gaza is imploding. This is not a hyperbole. This is not an alarmism. It is a reality, Maladanov told the council. He cited World Bank figures showing official unemployment at 53%, and with more than 70% of Palestinian youth jobless. Every second person in Gaza now lives below the poverty line, he said. It's a disaster. It really is. And you know, I just, it's a difficult situation to wrap your head around, but you know, I feel like that it doesn't have to be the way it is. If we took the time, instead of spending all the millions and billions of dollars that is spent on weapons and bombs and aircraft and things of that nature there, and instead tried to turn around and make places economically viable, try to create jobs, market, things of this nature here. You could change the lives of people to where you wouldn't have the problems that we have. I'm reminded, my wife was telling me about a man, and I forget the guy's name right off the top of my head, but he is a son of a high-ranking general in Israel, and he spoke about how that when he was in the IDF, he was brought up from a young age that the Palestinians are your enemy, and we have to learn to fight them in order to survive. But he said then he came to the United States. He came to California, and he said one of his first friends, he became his best friend, was a Palestinian. And he said it was rather awkward. He said because, in Israel, he was trained to fight and to kill them if necessary. But he comes to America, and he said we're on an equal playing field. We have equal rights, equal job access, equal right to vote. And he said, and we can be best friends. And it's interesting because, years ago, I also had more of the Zionist ideology, and I didn't like Palestinians for anything. But oddly enough, I come to the United States. Well, it's not that I was born here in the United States, but I was living in Israel at that time. And then when I come back to the United States, I end up meeting this one family, Palestinian family no less. It was a Palestinian lady, her mother and all them, but she was married to an American man. And we ended up becoming very close friends. And it was odd because in Israel, the mindset was the Palestinians are your enemy. And that they're not Palestinians. They are just Arabs that have invaded the land. And I used to have the same mindset as well, that this is exactly what it is. Now, granted, there are many Egyptians that came in that are Palestinians. There are many Syrians or people from Saudi Arabia, from Jordan, etc., that have also created it as made up the population of the Palestinian people. But that doesn't mean that every one of them are all Palestinians. There are many of these generations that have been there for decades and more than 100 years. I mean, when they first began to come in and buy up the land under the Ottoman Empire, there were Arabs living in the land. It was called Palestine at the time, okay? So they were known as quote-unquote Palestinians. And of course, just like in the United States, if you're born in the land, that's your native homeland. Children that are born in the United States, whether their parents were from Japan or from Mexico or whatever the case may be, when they're born here, you might be second, third generation from Mexico or from Japan or from Europe or anything like that. But once you've been born here, you're considered an American. This is who you are. And under the law that God gave Moses to give to us as the children of Israel, that the stranger that comes in among us, if you keep the laws of God, the 10 Commandments, that is, not the Noahide laws and the interpretation of the Talmudists, but the 10 Commandments, if you kept those 10 Commandments, they were to be equal to you, and we were not to oppress them. I mean, this was the clearest statement that God gave Moses to us as the children of Israel, was not to oppress the strangers that were in our midst there, because we were oppressed people. We're supposed to learn from what we went through. And by the way, all the times that we've ever been oppressed or that we've ever been exiled into other lands, it was because of our own sins. All right? So we got thrown out of the land because of what we did wrong, not because we were some great saintly people. And in fact, when we come back to the land of Israel today, it doesn't say that we come back with our eyes open and that we're such great, wonderful, noble people suddenly. We still come back just as blind as when we left, because nothing has changed. I mean, think about it. If you're my Israeli brother listening to this today, or my Israeli sister listening to this today, think about what I'm saying. We were thrown out of the land 2,000 years ago, maybe not quite 2,000 years ago, roughly that time, 70 AD. And of course, what were we thrown out of the land for? Well, think about it. We had the Sanhedrin. We had all the Orthodox rabbis. We did have a temple. We don't have a temple today, but the Temple Mount is still there. And of course, we had done what the Maccabees had done. They had brought in the Romans and made the covenant with Rome. Well, the government of Israel has done that as well. Shimon Peres made the covenant with Rome once again. And just as religious, we're just as religious. We have the Orthodox community just as religious. And in fact, not only did we have an oral law 2,000 years ago, now we've put the oral law in book form to make it a little bit easier so nobody seems to forget about it. And yet, nothing has changed. Everything that we did then is still the same, including the fact that we have Jews living in Israel today that are believing that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, for heaven's sake. And we're still persecuting that group of people as well, just as we did 2,000 years ago. So nothing really has changed. We're still dealing with wars with Syria, our neighbors, and that was going on as well. And if you remember, though, that, of course, was a violation of the covenant that went on between Laban and Jacob. Because why? We had Ahab, the king of the house of Israel, who married in Jezebel, a Zidonian, and brought idolatry into Israel. And the covenant that was made between Jacob and Laban was that you were never to take any other daughters other than his daughters. All right? In other words, you're to marry among your own people. And that also included the right to go into Abraham's family or Sarah's family as well in Syria, and you could actually marry in amongst the Syrian people because that was your family. All right? Oh, wow, didn't know that one, did you? Wow, gosh, geez. But no, instead, what are we doing? We're doing the same thing we did back 2,000, even before 2,000 years ago when the house of Israel was there. We're at war with Syria. We're at war with every nation practically in the region there. And yet the prophecies that the Egyptians and the Assyrians, which is part of the land of Syria, would end up being believers in the latter days. We know that there's a prophecy that they're going to end up believing. But we go back as Jews and we're just as blind, doing the exact same thing that our forefathers did 2,000 years ago. And I have Tovia Singer to bear witness that the Orthodox community today are the Pharisees of 2,000 years ago. Well, we got kicked out for the stuff we were doing 2,000 years ago, and we didn't change anything. So what makes it any better? Yes, we are fulfilling prophecy. The Jews are in their homeland. But he didn't tell us to come in there and to kill all the occupants that were there and to drive everybody out. This is not the 10 spies going into Israel to see that, oh, wow, by the way, we're invaded by giants. No, you go over there. What do you have? You have a Palestinian people with a DNA that is almost identical to the Sephardic Jews. They can literally go back at the time when the house of Israel was there and your bloodlines match. That's 2,500 years ago, not 2,700 years ago. So think about that for a moment. All right? What about the Bedouins? What about, there's several groups there in there. And every one of the groups that we have that are living there in Israel today, Armenians, whatever the case may be, we have a genetic identity with one another. But we're too busy killing everybody. We're too busy as an Israeli people trying to turn this into a Jewish state to where it's only Jews and doing the exact same thing that Hitler had his ideology about. In fact, that was one of the things that was in agreement with the Zionists and with the Jewish Congress with Hitler. Hitler believed in his superior race and not intermingling with other races. And of course, the Zionists were thinking the same thing. And when they came into Israel, this is one reason why Netanyahu, when they were debating about the abortion law in Israel, and it became such a liberal law under Netanyahu's passage of this during his administration, and it was the big to-do was all over about making sure none of the other groups could outnumber us. That sounds like what the Egyptians were doing, doesn't it? That's what Egypt did. Egypt was worried that the Jews would outnumber the Egyptians because they were more fruitful. And so what do? They kill all the males. You know, telling the midwives, as soon as a child is born, if it's a boy, kill it. If it's a girl, let it stay alive. Does it make us any better then when we have people in our own Knesset that are stating and the debate over the abortion law that maybe we should make the abortion legal all the way up to the 9 months, which you did make it legal that way, because you were more worried that the Palestinians might outnumber us and they would end up having the power of vote, and so therefore we would lose control of power as a Jewish state. That's not like a bunch of Egyptians trying to make laws in the state of Israel. But you know, if we treated our neighbor as ourselves, if we kept the commands of Moses, we wouldn't be having these problems. You know, maybe, just try it. Just try, for example. And Christian friends that are listening to the broadcast, if you haven't already turned your computer off because you don't like what's being said to you, do you have any idea, as a Christian, all right, now I'm not sitting here saying that you have to be a Christian. All right, if you're Muslim, you're a Muslim. If you're Jewish, you're Jewish. Okay, I'm not here to try to convert you one way or the other, but I want to speak to my Christian friends that are listening. Do you have any idea how many Jewish believers that believe that Yeshua is the Messiah are winning the souls of Palestinians to Christ? Do you have any idea the evangelical movement that is going on? That's why I compared a lot to 2,000 years ago, because the same thing that happened 2,000 years ago is happening today. And yet the most persecuted group in Israel today are the Israeli believers that believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. They're the most persecuted. See, it's not changed. Now, I do believe that the hour is coming where the scales will be lifted. And I believe that the Pharisees, Sadducees that would be living there today, whatever group it may be, the time will come where you will have an opportunity to know the real truth of the gospel. But the question is what will you do with it when it comes? And you, as my friends that are around the world, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever religion you may be, stop and think about it for a moment. What side do you want to be on? Where do you want to find yourself with God? When you stand before the Lord, do you want to say, I was standing with Israel while we killed everybody in the Middle East? Praise God, that's what we were sent here to do. No, that's not what you're sent here to do. Israel's supposed to be a light to the world. The thing is, there are hundreds of thousands of Israelis that do not support what is happening in our nation. But there's also hundreds of thousands of them that are also very blind to what's going on. And there's a little tiny minority, though, that do believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. Okay, but the point is, even the ones that don't believe that he's the Messiah, there's many of them that want peace. They don't want the war. They love the Palestinian people, and they don't think that they're the worst enemy on the planet Earth. And we're talking about people that have gone through the Intifada, myself included. September 22nd, 2014, I was there when the girl blew herself up there near French Hill. I was knocked off of my feet. I know what it's like to have to deal with a suicide bomber. But do you realize the political things that went on in the background? What caused the Intifada? Do you know anything about it? I've taught many times about these issues. That's a different subject, different time altogether. The point is, friends, is that Israel, the secular side of the government, the Zionist side of the government that is leading us to all these wars, we're not making ourselves the light of the world. We're making ourselves to become the target of the world. Was this the way Yeshua would do it? Is this the way he reached out to the Syrians when he was here? We need to think about it. Sure, it is prophesied that the house of Judah would return first. And that's another thing I see there a lot of people make a mistake on. They think that, oh no, all 12 tribes are in Israel. That's totally contrary to the Word of God. Completely contrary. Now, I don't say that there's not some remnants of some of the tribes, but all 12 tribes are definitely not back in Israel. That's not nowhere possible. Because God said in the book of Zechariah that he would bring home first the house of Judah, that the house of Israel lift not up its foot against them. And that their eyes come open. And that they, when we see in Zechariah 12, and they look upon him whom they have thrust through, it names David, Nathan, Shimei, the Levites, and the families that remained. Take all of these people and look at their genealogical roots there, and you'll find out it's only the house of Judah and the Samaritans, no one else. So where's the house of Israel? The house of Israel is waiting for the house of Judah to first come to a reconciliation for what happened 2,000 years ago that caused us to leave the land. What did Jeremiah do? What did Daniel do? Specifically Daniel. Daniel was praying and seeking God and repenting for the sins of his fathers that caused him to get exiled into Babylon for 70 years. There has to be a repentance, friends. And it's the same thing with my brothers in Israel, my sisters. Listen, we were exiled. Think about what we did wrong. Because right now, we're not going about trying to be a light to the nations. We're going about trying to torch the nations. The only light we're trying to shed is the bombs that explode, or the phosphorus that falls from the skies. Do you really think this is what the Almighty wants? Do you Christians realize that in Orthodox Judaism that it is believed that you as Gentiles are the servants or the slaves to the Jews? You probably don't even know that. But don't be angry with them. Don't hate them for it. They just don't realize that's not God's plan. All right? I've sat many times with very wealthy Jewish families and stuff. Be in their homes and talk about it. I had one guy one time, because we owned a delivery business, and he said to me, he says, Steve, you should never be doing anything. This is the Goyim's job. They're to serve us. That's the mentality of it. Because they're blind. But the problem is, Jesus in the book of Revelation said that the Laodicean church is blind also. Miserable, wretched. And she says she's rich and have need of nothing. Sound like the evangelical groups to me. They're not necessarily the people that are in the evangelical groups, but I'm talking about those leaders that are sitting there and directing how that the Trump administration should be doing their foreign policy and standing behind Israel. You're not standing behind Israel when you're sitting there blowing up everybody in the Middle East. That's not standing behind Israel. You might be standing behind the Zionist government that I'm taking, and I'll be putting out a video tomorrow on Patreon sharing with you more insights about just how sinister the Zionist, the Erdogan, the Stern Gang, and the different groups that were doing the evils that they did to our own people in the Holocaust. Nazi tactics, fascism to the core. And I'm watching it here creep right into the United States as well. You're going to end up with a fascist system. You don't even realize it. We've got to wake up to what's going on, guys. We really do. You want to support a ministry like that, stand with us and support this ministry. We depend on you to do it. No, we're not the money laundering church, not like the ones out there that are making the millions. The ones that say they're rich and have need of nothing. That's because they're money laundering dope money. Yeah, that's exactly what they do. We don't do stuff like that. So it's the poor people. It's the people that are kind enough to help support the work we do. They're the ones that go to Israeli News Live. And they help to support this, IsraeliNewsLive.org, and support there. We appreciate that. And also on patreon.com/Israeli News Live. You can also support us there at that. And I'll give you our address as well, just so you can see that as well. It's on here somewhere. I always forget where it's hiding at. Maybe I don't have it here anymore now. Yeah, here we go. Our address here in Orlando, to where you can help support the work we're doing. If you want to know truth, and that's what you're interested in, is what the truth is, stand with us. Show that you care about what the truth is. And double back. Look at the video that we posted earlier. Don't allow them to censor what the truth really is, because they try to block everything. And that's the interview we did with Christopher Boylan. You definitely want to watch that interview. It will definitely open your eyes. It really will open your eyes to what's really going on in the world. And when you see that, there was something else I was wanting to share with you, and I can't think of what it is. But anyway, We do appreciate you. We appreciate your love for this ministry, the work that we're trying to do, trying to get the truth out there. There's so few people that really want to know what the truth is. People would rather have their ears tickled. And so if that's the camp you're on, you want your ears tickled, then stay with the camps that tickle your ears. They'll stay right with mainstream media too. Oh, they'll pretend like, oh wow, no, we're not mainstream media, but the narrative's the same. Assad gassed his people. The white helmets are great, wonderful heroes and rescuers. All this, all the lies and propaganda. And anyway, I've rambled on too much. I'm sorry about that, guys. Anyway, we'll be on tomorrow as well. Pray for us, and we'll continue forward on the campaign to tell the truth around the world. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, shalom. In a world of Ein Shalom, there is no peace. Erev Tov.